Welcome to War and Untold Stories. Here we explore the hidden side of history. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. In 1898, a brief but explosive conflict reshaped the global balance of power and signaled the dawn of a new era. The Spanish-American War, though lasting only a few short months, was a pivotal moment in history. It marked the decline of one of Europe's oldest colonial empires and announced the dramatic arrival of a new superpower on the world stage, the United States. This conflict didn't just redraw maps, it redefined destinies and set in motion forces that would shape the 20th century and beyond. How did this short war have such a lasting impact? Join us as we journey back to the final years of the 19th century to uncover the story of ambition, rebellion, and the birth of an empire. For decades, the island of Cuba, a jewel of the Spanish Empire, simmered with the spirit of revolution. The Cuban people, weary of centuries of Spanish colonial rule, yearned for independence. Their struggle for freedom was met with brutal force. Spain, desperate to hold on to its dwindling empire, implemented harsh policies to crush the rebellion. General Valeriano Weyler's infamous reconcentrado policy forced hundreds of thousands of Cuban civilians into fortified camps. Conditions in these camps were horrific. Starvation and disease ran rampant, leading to immense suffering and loss of life. The plight of the Cuban people did not go unnoticed. In the United States, sensationalist newspapers, known as the Yellow Press, published dramatic and often exaggerated accounts of Spanish atrocities. These stories fueled public outrage and sympathy for the Cuban cause, creating a powerful wave of pro-war sentiment across America. The cry for intervention grew louder with each passing day, setting the stage for a confrontation that seemed increasingly inevitable. On the evening of February 15, 1898, a catastrophic event would push the two nations over the brink. The American battleship, the USS Maine, had been sent to Havana Harbor on a supposedly friendly visit, but its underlying mission was to protect American interests amidst the escalating turmoil in Cuba. That night, a massive explosion ripped through the ship's hull, sending it to the bottom of the harbor in a fiery cataclysm. 266 American sailors and Marines lost their lives in the disaster. Without waiting for a formal investigation, American newspapers, led by William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, immediately blamed Spain. Their headlines screamed for vengeance. "Remember the Maine! To hell with Spain!" This powerful slogan became a national rallying cry, galvanizing public opinion and turning the demand for war into a deafening roar that Washington could no longer ignore. Though the true cause of the explosion remains a subject of historical debate to this day, at that moment, it was the spark that lit the fuse of war. The immense public pressure following the sinking of the USS Maine left President William McKinley with little choice. The nation was swept up in a tide of patriotic fervor. Across the country, thousands of young men rushed to enlist, eager to take part in what they believed would be a splendid little war. Among these volunteers was a charismatic and ambitious politician, the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Theodore Roosevelt. Resigning his post, he organized a unique volunteer cavalry regiment known as the Rough Riders. This eclectic group, composed of everyone from Ivy League athletes and Western cowboys to lawmen and Native Americans, captured the public's imagination. As the nation mobilized, the U.S. military prepared to fight a war on two fronts, in the Caribbean and halfway across the world in the Pacific. The first major engagement of the war took place thousands of miles from Cuba. On May 1, 1898, the U.S. Asiatic Squadron, under the command of Commodore George Dewey, sailed into Manila Bay in the Spanish-held Philippines. Dewey had been given clear orders: you must capture vessels or destroy. What followed was one of the most decisive naval victories in American history. The American fleet, with its modern steel ships and superior gunnery, was vastly more powerful than the aging Spanish flotilla. In a battle that lasted only a few hours, Dewey's forces systematically annihilated the Spanish fleet. American cannons rained fire upon the enemy ships, turning Manila Bay into a scene of smoke and destruction. By the end of the morning, Spain's naval power in the Pacific had been completely shattered, all without the loss of a single American life in combat. The swift and total victory sent shockwaves across the globe and demonstrated the newfound might of the U.S. Navy. With the Spanish fleet crippled in the Pacific, the focus of the war shifted back to the Caribbean. In June, an American expeditionary force landed in Cuba, beginning the ground campaign. The fighting was tough, conducted in a sweltering tropical climate against an entrenched enemy. Disease, particularly yellow fever and malaria, proved to be an even deadlier foe than Spanish bullets. The most iconic battle of the Cuban campaign occurred on July 1st, during the assault on the city of Santiago. U.S. forces, including the African-American soldiers of the 9th and 10th Cavalry, launched a series of attacks on the Spanish defenses surrounding the city. It was here that Theodore Roosevelt and his Rough Riders, fighting dismounted alongside regular troops, made their legendary charge up Kettle Hill, adjacent to the more famous San Juan Hill. Their bravery helped break the Spanish lines, securing a critical victory that effectively sealed Spain's fate in Cuba. Defeated on land and at sea, a weakened Spain had no choice but to sue for peace. On December 10, 1898, representatives from both nations met in Paris to sign the treaty that would formally end the war. The terms of the Treaty of Paris were a stunning blow to the old Spanish Empire. Spain was forced to relinquish its claim to Cuba, ceding it to American oversight, though Cuba would eventually gain formal independence. More significantly, Spain ceded the territories of Puerto Rico and Guam to the United States. In a highly controversial move, Spain also sold the Philippines to the U.S. for $20 million. In the span of a single year, the United States had transformed from a continental nation into a global imperial power, acquiring a vast overseas empire that stretched from the Caribbean to the far reaches of the Pacific. The world map had been redrawn. The Spanish-American War, though it lasted only a few short months, cast a long shadow over the 20th century. Its legacy was profound and multifaceted. For the United States, it was a coming-of-age moment, catapulting the nation onto the world stage as a major military and economic power. The war solidified a new, more interventionist foreign policy and gave the country a new set of national heroes, most notably Theodore Roosevelt, whose fame from the war would propel him to the presidency. But this new chapter for America meant a painful and complex future for the people of the newly acquired territories. The acquisition of the Philippines, in particular, led to a brutal and bloody conflict as Filipino nationalists, who had fought alongside the Americans against Spain, now turned their guns against their new colonial rulers. The war marked the end of Spanish imperial dominance and the definitive rise of American influence, changing the course of history forever. Thank you for joining us on this journey through a pivotal moment in world history. If you found this documentary insightful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.